The alarm tore through the palace kitchen like a scream that would not stop. 3 sharp blasts, then silence, then 3 more. I had heard that sound only once before. During a drill nobody took seriously. Nobody was taking it lightly now. I am Daniel, and I have cooked in this palace for 11 years. I was halfway through preparing dinner when every pot, every knife, every quiet routine of my life stopped mattering at once. Around me, the kitchen staff froze. Emma dropped a tray of bread. Oliver stood with his mouth open, staring at the ceiling speaker as if it might explain itself. Lucy grabbed my arm, her fingers shaking. "Daniel, what is happening?" "Lockdown," I said. "Someone has broken into the palace." The words did not feel real even as I said them. But my hands were already moving, untying my apron, setting down the knife I had been using to prepare the evening meal. "Everyone, go to the lower pantry. Now. Walk fast. Do not run. Do not scream. Go." They obeyed. Fear does strange things to people. Sometimes it freezes them, and sometimes it makes them listen to the calmest voice in the room. Tonight, mine was the calmest voice, even though my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. Lucy hesitated at the door. "What about you?" "I will catch up. I need to check something first." That was not a full answer, and she knew it, but there was no time to explain. I turned toward the east storage room, instead of the stairs leading down to safety. Here is something nobody in this palace ever thought to ask me. They hired a chef because chefs are supposed to be gentle people, who spend their lives around food, not danger. They saw my calm hands and steady voice, and decided I was harmless. They never once asked what kind of life teaches a man to stay calm when everything is falling apart. I grew up in a part of the world where staying calm was not a personality trait, it was survival. Long before I ever wore a chef's apron, I learned how to move quietly, how to notice every exit in a room, how to use whatever was near me as a tool. Cooking gave me a new life. It did not erase the old one. The east storage room held more than vegetables and sacks of grain. It held a few personal things I had carried with me for 11 years and never once needed. A long kitchen knife, sharpened out of habit rather than necessity. A heavy rolling pin made of solid wood. Tools that meant nothing to anyone else and everything to someone who knew how to use them. I picked them up and stepped into the hallway. The east corridor led toward the private wing of the palace, where the king and his 2 children lived. According to the emergency system blinking on the wall panel, the danger signal was coming from exactly that direction. I did not go toward the lower pantry. I went east. The first intruder was trying to force open the service elevator. He was tall, wearing dark protective gear, moving with the confidence of someone who believed the building was already empty. He heard my footsteps and turned, and when he saw a sweating man in a stained apron holding kitchen tools, he almost laughed. That half-second of amusement cost him everything. I did not give him a chance to raise the weapon in his hand. Years of quick reflexes in a busy, dangerous kitchen had trained my body to move before my mind finished deciding. In one motion, I closed the distance and knocked the weapon from his grip, then used his own balance against him. He went down hard, stunned and disarmed, unable to continue. I did not wait to see if he would get back up. I moved on. 2 more men were working near a locked door further down the hallway, focused entirely on breaking through it. Their backs were turned to me. They believed the kitchen staff had already fled far away. Nobody expected danger to come quietly from behind. I remembered something simple from years of long kitchen shifts, something most people never think about. Certain floors in this palace, especially near the storage rooms, become extremely slippery when the cooling system is triggered. I reached the nearby valve and released it, filling the narrow hallway with a thick layer of freezing mist that instantly coated the stone floor. The 2 men did not know how to move on a surface like that. I did. I had spent years balancing on wet kitchen tiles while carrying trays and hot pans without ever losing my footing. While they slipped and struggled to stay upright, I moved past them, knocking them off balance completely before they even understood what had happened. Neither one could stand steady long enough to become a threat again. I kept moving. The private wing was close now. I could hear something through the heavy wooden door ahead, a small voice trying very hard to stay silent. It was Grace, the king's daughter. She was only 11 years old, and she loved the sweet pastries I made for her every week, even though her tutors always said she should not eat so many sweets before dinner. Hearing her trying so hard not to cry gave me a strange kind of strength. I did not slow down at the door. I had learned long ago that hesitating in front of a door is often more dangerous than walking through it. So I moved through quickly, without pausing. 2 more men stood inside, both larger than me, both clearly trained for exactly this kind of situation. For a moment, I saw surprise flicker across their faces. Word of what had happened to their companions must have somehow reached them already. One of them said something like, "It is just the cook," in a tone that suggested he wished it were not true. It was true. And it did not matter. People had underestimated me my whole life, and for 11 years I had let them, because it meant they trusted me with sharp tools, hot stoves, and every dangerous corner of a working kitchen. That trust had never gone to waste, and it would not start tonight. The fight that followed was fast, and did not last long. I used the space around me, the furniture, the narrow hallway, and every bit of the same quick thinking that had kept me safe long before I ever became a chef. Within moments, both men were stopped, no longer able to continue, and the private wing was finally silent again. I stood there for a second, breathing hard, my hands trembling slightly now that there was nothing left to focus on except the sudden quiet. Grace peeked out from behind an overturned chair, her eyes wide and wet with tears she had refused to let fall until now. "Daniel?" she whispered, as if she could not quite believe it. "It is safe now," I told her gently. "You did so well staying quiet. I am proud of you." She ran to me, and for a long moment, I simply knelt there, letting her hold on tightly, while the last of the alarms slowly faded into silence around us. It took nearly 20 minutes before the palace guards finally arrived, moving carefully through the corridors, clearly caught off guard by how calm everything already was. Their captain, a tall man named Henry, walked in first, his weapon raised, only to lower it slowly when he saw the scene in front of him. 5 intruders lay stopped and unable to continue across different parts of the hallway, and standing in the middle of it all, holding a rolling pin in one hand and a kitchen knife in the other, was me, still wearing my apron. Henry stared at me for a long moment before he could speak. "Daniel, you did this?" "Someone had to," I said simply. The king arrived only a minute later, moving quickly despite his age, his eyes searching desperately for his daughter, until he saw her standing safely beside me. Relief crossed his face so strongly that for a moment he looked 10 years younger. "Chef," he said slowly, looking at me as though seeing me for the very first time, even after 11 years. "I was told you managed my kitchens." "I do, Your Majesty," I answered. He looked around at the hallway, at the stopped intruders, at his daughter's tear-streaked but calm face, and finally back at me. 11 years, he said quietly. 11 years, you have cooked in this palace, and I never once knew. It has been the best job I have ever had, I told him honestly, and I meant it. He did not ask what I had done before becoming his chef. Some things I have learned are better left unspoken. Not every part of a person's life needs to be shared to be understood. Grace tugged gently at my sleeve. "Will you still make my pastries tomorrow?" I smiled despite everything, despite the exhaustion settling deep into my arms and legs. "Of course," I promised, "and I always keep my promises to you." The king watched this exchange with something like quiet amazement, as though he could not decide whether to thank me or simply stand there in stunned silence. In the end, he chose both, resting a hand briefly on my shoulder before turning to instruct his guards. Later that night, after the guards had cleared the hallway and order had returned to the palace, I walked back to the kitchen alone. The bread Emma had dropped still lay scattered near the door. The knife I had left behind sat exactly where I had placed it hours earlier. I picked it back up, washed my hands, and returned to finishing the meal I had abandoned earlier that evening. Dinner service, after everything, still needed to happen. Somehow, that felt right. Life continues, even after the most frightening moments, and sometimes the most ordinary tasks are what help us feel steady again. As I worked quietly under the kitchen lights, Lucy appeared in the doorway, staring at me with an expression somewhere between disbelief and gratitude. They are saying you stopped 5 men by yourself, she said softly. I did what needed to be done, I replied, not looking up from my work. She studied me for a long moment before finally stepping closer, picking up a cloth, and beginning to help me clean without another word. Some things did not need explaining. We finished preparing dinner together in comfortable silence, the danger of the night slowly fading behind us, replaced by the simple, steady rhythm of a kitchen returning to normal. By the time the last dish was ready to be served, the palace felt calm again, as if the night's events had already begun settling into memory. I untied my apron, hung it carefully by the door, and allowed myself, finally, to breathe.